get started. We don't want to waste time with you guys getting acquainted. So, we'll get a few more people coming. We'll save the soft seats for them. You're very kind to do that. Today's session, I think, is always really very interesting, and that is, and a little bit frightening, maybe really frightening, and that is legal issues. And we're very fortunate to have on our faculty Charles Carrick, who is an attorney as well as having his doctorate in education, and so and his specialty is school law. So he's just been a gift to us, and I will also say that for a lawyer, he's very generous with his information. He doesn't charge us as much as, he could.
Cup of coffee.
I know, he works for food, if you believe that.
As you can tell.
And Michelle is in the student development program, and she is working in higher ed issues as well. And so she's kind of taking a big research project of looking at higher ed law. And so they're going to do this as a team presentation today. Michelle works in the student development sector, and she's the assistant director of housing and residential law. So
Thank you very much.
and I'll sit at the company chair.
As Michelle moves over to the magic machine, let me tell you, we're happy to be with you today, in spite of all the snow. And we've got two simple things that we'd like to accomplish. First of all, we'd like to help you become aware of situations that you want to avoid, and situations that could lead to some litigation. And then our second goal is that should you find yourself in one of those places, we want to help you know the facts that you have to develop so that you can give your attorney, who will hopefully be able to defend you successfully. Michelle is going to present all the foundational stuff, the important background, and then I shall chat with you about 6 hypothetical situations that are possible for you to confront during your career.
Great.
Michelle.
Great. So we'll first look at background information. Can get this to work? Yes. I realized, well, I've probably realized this for longer than I can admit, but that I just don't feel confident when it comes, or I didn't feel confident when it came to legal issues and what I needed to do. And I think first we just need to look at the background. Some of this you might be aware of, so we'll go through it quick so we can spend time on the hypotheticals. But first, looking at private versus public institutions. I don't know if you hear this chatter around campus, but sometimes you hear, we're a private institution, we can do whatever we want, or, we think we have more freedom than we actually do, and we do have to abide by state and federal regulations. Being employers, there are regulations that we have to follow. Being an institution that receives federal funding, there are plenty of things that we have to make sure that we are aligning ourselves with. And then an academic institution, research and other regulations that we need to follow. So we might have increased freedom over academic matters and daily operations, but there's definitely things that we need to look at. Our public institutions, our peer institutions, they are held to the 14th Amendment. I think there's a word here that's really important, that's state. No state shall make or enforce any law that shall abridge the privileges or immunities, nor shall any state deprive any persons of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So this is something that we are not held to as private institutions. We're not subject to these constitutional provisions. Our students, they don't get that unless we're acting as a private actor, as an agent of the state. For me, the easiest example, and I work in residential life and housing, but is with room searches, and I hope this can parallel. But if I have a student that we have a concern about, we suspect that they have something in their room that needs to be confiscated. If the police call and ask us to act on their behalf, hey, we want you to search this person's room, all of a sudden we would be acting as an agent of the state. We have to follow all of, a warrant or whatever else that we need to put in place. If we're following up on our own suspicions, we have to follow our student handbook. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But for me, that was helpful to see when we're acting as an agent of the state and when we're acting as a private actor. And so in most cases, the 14th Amendment does not extend to our students. Employee regulations, and these are just examples that I'm sure you're well aware of. The Equal Pay Act, Title VII, which prohibits us as an institution, as employers, from discriminating based on protected class, whether that's race, color, religion, sex, national origin. And this is also where we're protected from sexual harassment as employees. So every year we get that, training from Human Resources. That's where this is coming from. And then, of course, American with Disabilities Act, which prohibits any discrimination against a person with a disability if they're able to perform the essential functions of the task. So as employers, those are some of the regulations that we are required to follow. As far as general information looking at our institution, our students have expectations and we have responsibility towards them. I think this, are any of you familiar with the Clery Act? The Clery Act came about, I think her name was Jeannie Clery. She died in 1986. It was a very violent murder, and her parents did a lot in response to her death. And one of the things that they did was they worked to create this law that would require schools, or does require schools, to publicly communicate the crimes that happen in and around their campuses, as well as safety guidelines. Every October, you'll probably get an email from Ashley News saying, you can find our crime statistics online here. That's where this is coming from. The Cleary family said that if they had known what was happening in the area in terms of the crime, they maybe would not have sent their daughter to that school. But there was no way to compare schools. There was no standards that schools had to at least promote or report. And so that's one of the key things that the Clery Act covers. It also requires that we provide our students timely warnings. So in the event that we suspect or we foresee that they could potentially be in danger, we have a responsibility, and this comes out of our campus safety office, text messages to get that message to students. And then reporting missing students after 24 hours. They're adults, but we're still kind of in this in-between stage, and so if a student is missing, and sometimes you might get an email from Darla Nelson saying, have you seen this student in your class? It may or may not be, but it could be coming from the fact that we haven't seen them around, and we want to make sure that they're safe.
Reporting suspected child abuse and neglect. I think the different states have different requirements. Tennessee makes this pretty black and white for us. As an adult in the state of Tennessee, we have to report child abuse. And so we just wanted to mention that, given that there are not a lot of children on campus, but we do have some young students, whether that's dual enrollment or maybe choirs on campus. I think some of our international students have come to us at age 16. Or maybe you have a student and they've told you about what's happening back at home and there are siblings, younger children there.
Excuse me, we do need to spend a moment or two dealing with this. It is very possible those of you that teach freshmen, maybe sophomores, will have someone under 18 in your class. In Tennessee, the child abuse reporting law applies to anyone under the age of 18. So if you reasonably suspect any abuse or neglect, you're required by law to report it. Now, to whom do you report? Well, it's either the sheriff, county sheriff, the police chief if it's a municipality, a juvenile judge, or Child Protective Services. My suggestion to you is, if you're ever in a position that you suspect abuse or neglect, that you report it to Child Protective Services, because that's who the sheriff and the police chief are going to contact. Now, the good news is they have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline, and you can contact them that way, or you can go online if it's not an emergency, and they'll take the report that way. Now, unfortunately, you expect to get some information back, but it's very unlikely that you will once you make a report. Again, there are some confidentiality considerations. Also, they're overwhelmed, they're swamped. Probably in Tennessee, the biggest problem that we confront in terms of abuse and neglect are mom and dad entering into a second occupation, and that's cooking meth. And it's not uncommon, in fact, for parents to use the kids' nursery. Well, put baby to sleep, and let's go make a couple gallons or whatever. And that's fairly common, and that serves an important point. You may have something that's happened that you really consider to be serious. Maybe you have a high school kid, dual enrollment, and the kid tells you, I haven't eaten in a week, or had breakfast, lunch. I only eat when I come here, and you have snacks. That is important. You need to report that. But with Child Protective Services dealing with meth parents, that's going to take a priority. In the situation that I mentioned as far as the eating, you would think that in normal cases the kid would be yanked out of the home and put somewhere else. But again, that's not their priority right now. Also, the southeastern states have entered into a federal consent decree to keep families together to the maximum extent possible. So that's the case. Now, there is some good news. One, if you report an abusive situation, please know that your report is confidential. They will not go to the parent and say, so-and-so at that crazy Christian school reported you. Now, they will ask for your name because they may want to come back to you and ask you further questions. But they will not go to their parent. And the last thing about our abuse law is that it is a criminal offense if you suspect and don't report it. A number of years ago, those of you that have been in Bradley County for a while know this, probably experienced. We had a situation, it's called the Melissa Gibson case. And that turned the way child abuse reporting laws were written throughout the country. It was such an outrageous situation. Now, this law is reasonably new. It's 2 years old. The difference here is that any person who has knowledge is a required reporter. It used to be that teachers, college professors, ministers fell in the group called required reporters. Now, any person that has knowledge is considered a required reporter. There is no confidentiality. You absolutely are required to make that contact. And I'm stressing this to you because we don't want a Penn State or my alma mater, a case like the Citadel had, where people in the school knew about child abuse going on, and everybody says, well, you just tell the person above us. There is a way to report, to get the monkey off your back, and it's important that we follow through.
And then Title IX, educational amendments. So fair gender representation, and this is where our students are protected from harassment, whether it's student to student or student to staff. Again, employees are protected under Title VII. Contracts between students and the institution, our student handbook frames this for us. So when there's no state action, when that doesn't exist, that's going to be a key document for us as our contract. And even though there's no constitutional rights at a private institution, in the court of law, we're still held to the standard of due process. And so we have to be clear with our students of what we expect from them and what the repercussions are if they don't follow through, and make sure that we give them the chance to kind of have their day in court. So due process is key, both in and out of the classroom. In the classroom, academic integrity is probably where that's going to affect you most. And I think what we talked about is making sure that you follow procedures within your department, whatever those standards are, whatever we've given to our students from your department. Consistency with that is our role, what we need to do. and then briefly looking at student safety, and we'll cover this more in one of the hypotheticals. But I think a lot of parents, I talk to parents when they arrive in August and January, but especially August, and they, say, oh, but that wouldn't happen here. I think our students are kind of protected from some of the mental health concerns or, things that we're going to see with our students. And so if we have a knowledge of a concern, then we have a special duty relationship with that student, and we have a responsibility to respond. One of the ways that we're working and continuing to evolve as an institution is the Student Care Committee. So previously the Student Concerns Committee, we're really excited that just this semester that name has kind of flipped to be more positive. But essentially a group of individuals from across campus are coming together to say, these are the referrals that we've received, these are the concerns, who can we get involved on campus so we can create a good plan so that both our campus and our students are safe.
Can I just throw something in
Yes,
there?
please do.
Next month, the meeting of this group will be about how you report this and who you report it to on campus. So, if you think a student's suicidal, or if you just think they need to see a counselor, or if they need tutoring or whatever, we're going to talk about that next time.
Great. And so, but between now and then, if you have any referrals, Dr. Hayes would be a great person, as well as your department chair. Okay, so I think that gives hopefully a broad foundation. We can jump into some practical implications.
Okay, let's pretend that you're in your office one day, and a student comes to you with a particular tale of woe. And the first thing out of the student's mouth is, I need to talk to somebody that cares about me, but you've got to promise not to tell anybody. Yeah, in your mind you're thinking, gosh, I've only got another 45 minutes and I can go home. It's cold here, I just want to leave. Sure, tell me what's going on. I won't tell anybody. Well, and then proceeds to tell you about the breakup with his girlfriend, and life is terrible. And he says, I've been thinking about dropping out of school, I've been thinking about doing all sorts of things, and I've even thought about ending it all. And you listen, you practice that good stuff that you learned in undergraduate psycho classes and psychology. I can't get those schools. And you use the good listening skills, and after a while he says, you've really helped me. I've made a decision, and I now know what I'm going to do, and thank you very much, and leaves. Now the question is, what are you going to do? Here are some options. Do nothing. After all, you gave the kid your word that you wouldn't talk to anybody. Okay, so he's having a tough time. I'm going to not require him to take the midterm. We'll defer the final, and if he's having any problems, he can take the tougher parts of the class later. Someone. What would you do?
What would I do, or what should I do?
What would you do? What would you do? Real life.
Real life?
Yeah.
So based on what you said, I would think he left with a positive attitude. I would probably do nothing, but I should refer him to the counselors.
And that's the case. We have a situation, it falls in a category of law called torts. T-O-R-T-S. That's not the thing with strawberries or cherries on top. And a tort is a civil wrong, it is the area of law in which teachers are sued more than all the other areas combined. And there are several different types of torts, but the one we're concerned with is called a negligence tort. And in terms of a negligence tort, there are 4 elements. The first question you always want to ask is, do I have a duty? Do you have a responsibility? The second element is, well, if I have that responsibility, has it been unmet? Did I not do it? And then the third part is there has to be an injury. In this case, the kid goes out and shoots himself or decides to shoot others. Then the fourth question ties it all together. Was the injury a result of the breach of duty? Now, in the situation that I've just mentioned, courts are mixed, but they slightly are favoring that we as instructors, when we know something and don't do anything about it, we have breached our special duty. And so we expose ourselves to this charge of negligence. And it is a place where we don't want to be. Again, as Michelle mentioned, you'll get more information, as Carol mentioned, next month. But the Reader's Digest version is here. You contact Dr. Mike Hayes' office and let them know. Since I've been here not quite 11 years, I've had 3 cases where kids, during the time we've chatted, they really concerned me in terms of what they were saying. I was concerned for their safety. In one case, mine. And of the 3, 2, after I referred, left campus within that week. So they needed some help that we couldn't provide. So it's important we follow. Let's move. There we go.
Dr. Carrick, could we get in trouble for breaching that confidentiality?
No. In fact, you asked the question right at the right time. Just like I told you I wanted you to do yesterday. Please understand this. There ain't no such thing as confidentiality. None. Not a zip, zilch, nothing. No one here has privilege. You are required to report. Back to the standard. So a kid comes and tells. Now, you want to be true to your word. And so what I invite you to do is to frame something so you fit it somewhere in your brain, that when you hear the statement, I got to talk to you, but you got to promise not to tell anybody, it just comes out automatically. Well, I care too much about you not to share with appropriate people if you need help, or I'll agree with that, but understand if you tell me something that has some legal implications, I'm going to have to refer it to someone else, but I'll let you know before I say anything.
That's what I was going to say. Wouldn't it be a good segue at the end to say, this is too important a conversation?
Yeah.
Even though I told you at the beginning, I wouldn't, this is too important, I care too much for you, we do need to talk about it. I think it would allow the student to share, rather than at the beginning of the conversation saying, but I would think you definitely need to say, I've got to tell someone.
The only dilemma you've got is you create the situation where the kid stands up and says, but you promised me at the beginning you wouldn't say anything, and I wouldn't have told you. And again, so what, you don't like me, get in line. That's okay. But that works too. But that's a way to handle it. Now we have another concern, and again, we are required to provide a safe environment. So consequently, a kid tells us something is unsafe, or is going to do something, or we reasonably suspect, then we have the obligation to tell about them. Now, we've got this acronym down here at the bottom, FERPA. That's the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It is probably one of the most misunderstood federal laws in existence. Now, FERPA, don't we have a...
Yeah.
Here we go. This is a scenario, and this is one that you, especially those of you that teach freshmen, will very possibly have land in your face. Late one afternoon, again, you're thinking, gosh, it's going to be great to get home, watch the Gilligan's Island reruns, have a cup of coffee, and the phone rings, and it's Mama. And she tells you that my son Precious is in your class, and I want to know how he's doing. Well, what do? You know, it's the mama's kid. There's no doubt about it. She was the one that came with him on Lee Day, and you know, you were talking to the kid, and she was answering the questions. When you'd ask him a question, what class do you want to take? She said, well, he can't take anything before 10 o'clock, and he can't take anything after 1 o'clock, and no classes on Friday. Maybe I'm the only one that had Mama's like that. So do you tell her? Well, FERPA, again, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, tells us that education information belongs to the owner, the kid, the student. So we say, well, we can talk to you about the attendance, punctuality, but I can't talk to you about grades. Don't tell her anything. Just say, hey, you know, we got this federal law, and I don't like it any more than you do, and I can't say anything, so goodbye. She'll really donate to our next building. And the final one, refer to the registrar's office. At Lee University, the proper course of action is if you get a call, is, again, hopefully talk the person down a little bit. But feel free to tell them that here we do have this law that limits what we can tell parents about their students' grades, and that folks in the registrar's office can help them. Again, the law is such that if a parent is providing just over half of the child's tuition, the cost of attending school, they have access to the information, whether the kid would like that or not. Now, this FERPA thing is really crazy. Any information, any, capital A, capital N, capital Y, any information belongs to the kid. I know someone in this room that had the delightful chore of sending congratulations letters to newspapers for kids that make Dean's List. And we had a student that didn't want anybody in her hometown to know anything about her, where she was, what she was doing. And so she raised a little ruckus about that. And guess what? She was on the right side. We have to get permission to do that.
Can I say one thing about that too?
Sure.
Until they come to college, parents are the ones that are protected, and they have the rights to all their kids' information. And they don't often understand, they don't get it, that when the kid comes here, the child is protected from them as much as he is from anyone else. So that is a huge pivot for parents, because they're used to calling up and asking, and they are given the information until they come to college. But it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't matter if they're 16 or
Absolutely.
17, as long as they're in college, it's still their privacy that's being protected against their parents.
Unless they release the information. If they release the information, then you're free to share. Again, and the folks that are going to have the toughest time dealing with this will be your dual enrollment parents.
So they have the same protection as a full-time college
Yeah,
student, regardless of age?
They're here in college. Now, again, you'll be reporting to the counselor or someone at the high school.
And
So
they're free to,
yeah, they're free to get the information there.
because at that point it's at the high school level?
That's right. It's kind of crazy, isn't it?
Charles, am I wrong? It seems to me at one point I remember a conversation, I think, with people in the registrar's office, we were talking about this, and there was some kind of a document that students signed,
Uh-huh.
and they allowed them, as long as they had signed that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Is that still the case?
As far as I know, Michelle,
if you would get a phone call like that, and how would you know?
That
Is that on Portico somewhere? We see
Well,
that they signed a waiver?
You don't make the decision.
So you would just.
You just say, gosh, I'd really like to help you, but you know how those people are in Washington, they pass this crazy law. And, but
Okay.
the people that can help you, and they're really nice, let me give you your phone number, I'll train, you can schmooze them a little bit. But we can do that. And again, Carolyn's right on target. It is not a matter of age, it's a matter of position, college or not.
Where a student inquires about a grade, but involves his parents via email, and kind of gives implied consent that they want their parents to know.
Like they CC them?
Yeah, or they even say in the email, you know, I'm CCing my parents on this, and letting you know up front that they're kind of giving consent.
I love this part, because you can't send grades through email anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Also
right.
because of her.
Yeah.
But we're not even really discussing grades, we're discussing why a person received a certain grade, and it's not even discussing actual scores, it's discussing.
You're lazy, you didn't answer the last 10 questions,
Yeah.
and you expect a perfect grade, only answering 5 questions. Is that kind of situation?
Similar, or that they just didn't show up for the final, or
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
You may not like the same, in fact, you may not like any of my answers.
I've loved everything.
I would not CC the parents. I would keep my communication with the kiddo. If the kiddo chooses to share with mom and dad, in fact, you could say, I'm going to communicate with you. What you do with it is your business, because you're the owner of the information. And that's it. Now, there are 2 other parts of this law that are woefully misunderstood. First of all, you're going to hear people say, you're going to get sued. And I've said, as a superintendent and a principal, I've said it probably 60 million times too. Guilty. All my sins are coming back at me since I've been here. And please understand that you individually cannot be sued for violating FERPA. The penalty for violating FERPA is that the institution loses all its federal funds. Now, for us, that would mean students would lose all their student aid money. And that's, I think, sufficient and significant motivation to obey it. But since 1974, when the law was passed, no institution has ever lost its federal funding. Now, there have been over 2,000 investigations, typically. They're handled by conciliation, both parties getting together and fixing things. But know that you're not going to lose your house or your firstborn child. The other thing, we're dealing, unfortunately, in the world with, especially in the United States, with campus shootings. The most notorious recent one I can think of, higher ed, that has relation to this is the Colorado shooting, where the kid was seeing a psychologist on campus, and she didn't feel that she could reveal anything, and she cited FERPA as the reason. FERPA doesn't prevent that. Now, again, it may be an ethical concern, but as I understand, if you feel somebody's in danger of hurting themselves or other folks, you can get appropriate agencies involved. But FERPA would not prevent that, and nor does it. In fact, it specifically allows you to contact other agencies if you believe a student is a danger to himself or to others. That's probably one of the most important things I hope to leave today with. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So you say the federal government cannot sue me because of, let's say, someone else got the student's grade, right?
Well, it would not be the federal government suing you. It would be the parent.
So the parent would sue me,
Well,
but
they
the parent cannot sue me.
They
The
cannot
parent
sue.
can sue the institution.
They cannot.
What does can the parent
The
do?
recourse to them is that they must file a complaint with it's a family something or another council, is a federal agency.
Okay.
And then that group will conduct an investigation and to see if you did something wrong. Now, they have the authority, if you did deliberately do something wrong, to take all the federal money from the institution. But based on their track record for the past, let's see, 74, that's 26, 31, past 40 years, they've never done that. Now, they've said you were wrong, you might get fired,
Yeah.
you might not be renewed if you're non-tenured, but but that's the institution taking action, not a result of the suit.
But the institution can sue the faculty.
Well,
Or
no,
not.
that they're not going to sue. The institution, let's say you do something wrong. Let's say you talk to somebody about a kid's grades, and you shouldn't have. Now, the first time they probably won't do much, but if you do it again, they may very well say, you know, you're just not the kind of person we want here, and they're not going to sue you. They'll non-renew your contract. Again, the fact of the matter is, as a non-tenured instructor, you have a year-to-year contract. And basically they can come up to you and say, well, you know, thank you for your service, we're not going to renew your contract. And that's it. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I say add something to that too?
Sure.
Although this isn't the legal aspect, the Southern Association also follows up on this compliance.
Ah,
So
okay.
it's kind of part of our accreditation as well.
Okay. I'm glad you're here. Let's see. Let's talk about, we're in the home stretch, so stay with me. Writing references. This is something that all of you over the course of your careers will have the opportunity to do sometime or another. Let's pretend you've got a student that's not the most stellar student. Maybe he's connected and he asks you to write a reference. Now, what do you do? You can write a reference, giving him glowing remarks and everything. Of course, you don't want to be sued for defamation. You can decline his request, tell him what you plan to say, or provide an accurate reference and say nothing and let the chips fall where they may. What would you do? That's what do you think?
I would do number 2.
I'm sorry. Who
I said I would do number 2.
declines request? Okay, you decline his request and Kurt says why?
Number 3.
Okay. Actually, you can tell him why. And that's the reason I'm asking the question. Please understand that for defamation to attach, for it to come into play, there has to be what's called publication. It has to be said, reported to a third person. I can say, Michelle, as a student, was lazy, no account, I'm glad you're here, no account, just didn't do her work. Now, if I say that to her, I haven't defamed her. If I say it to somebody else, I have. Now, that's important because I can say, all right, Michelle, this is what I'm going to say. Do you want me to say it? That's one way. Another thing you can do is, depending on what the student does, please understand, again, this is where FERPA comes in. Who owns the information? The kid does, unless they've waived it. So a reference that you write, please understand, unless they waive the right to see it, they get to see it. Now, I think it was the psychology department, maybe 3-4 years ago, you all developed a form for students who, it was humanities, it was you guys, that when a kid comes in and asks for a reference, you give them the form. Again, it's really neat. It asks for a little bit of VITA information, because after 3 or 4 years, they you know, they're like college professors, they all look the same. And then you
Two options, just like we do on any other form, waive the right or not waive the right.
Yeah.
So we have it in writing then.
and so you're good.
So it would be better for us to use one of the forms that kids will bring us where they've waived it than to write them an actual letter of recommendation or.
Well, it depends. If it's all good news, or if you're going to allow the kid to see it, or he knows what you're going to say, then it really doesn't matter.
Okay.
If it's not good news and he's not going to see it, if he waives it, typically you get a form saying, I waive the right. I'd probably use that form. Okay. Now, please understand that in the act of writing references, you have what's called a qualified privilege. Qualified privilege. And what that means is as long as you are responding to a request for information about a kid, as long as you are factual and truthful, then you cannot be successfully sued. Now, that means that you have to respond to the request. Let's pretend, again, we've got Michelle here, and she's applying for a job at UTC. Now, she's had me, she knows better than to ask me for a reference. Most of my students feel that way. But I find out she's applying for a job at UTC, and I know the person that she's going to be working for if she gets a job. I pick up the phone call and say, hey, I need to tell you about Michelle. I don't have the qualified privilege because I'm not responding to a request. You understand the distinction? Okay.
Can I just mention, I thought this was really interesting that our student workers are considered students, and so this is part of, I mean, all of that applies. I was thinking they might be employees, but I just thought that was an important distinction.
Well,
Is there,
I'm sorry.
That's okay, Bob.
I maybe take us off track, but since you said that, it really concerns me that a lot of student workers have access to all kinds of stuff that, you know, have to do with maybe tweetmate, you know, grades and all that stuff. And it's one thing, you know, when you have graduate students who are teaching assistants. It's something else, though, that when you have peers who do this. What about those students who grade exams and have access to grade books and do all that kind of stuff?
The only thing I can suggest is, again, to protect the instructor who's using the student, and to protect the student, that you document that you've conducted an orientation session regarding what they do or should do, and that you have them sign some sort of statement that they understand that the information they're dealing with is confidential, privileged, not to be divulged to others. Is that great or perfect? Absolutely not. But it is enough to hopefully protect you. You've given your attorney some facts that he can defend you with should some liability issue arise. But let's move on to Hazen. Okay. Let's pretend you're the faculty sponsor of an organization, and it is time to do the induction, the week that everyone wishes that they don't in a club or a fraternity. And you've got several options to do.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay. You've been asked not to attend because, you know, it's just routine, nothing's going to happen. You know, we're just going to make them holler and shout. Nobody's going to make them go through a paddle line. Nobody's going to make them swallow an oyster on a string, and then we'll pull the oyster back out. None of that stuff. Something like that. That's a good idea. Next time, we're going to do that. You know, here are three options. And the correct one is number 3. Please understand, in Tennessee, hazing is a violation of law. It's a criminal act. And your lack of involvement, if you're not there, and it goes on, you create a situation it's called negligence per se. And all the court has to do is prove that hazing went on, you were the sponsor, the supervisor, you weren't there, duty, breach of duty, injury caused by the breach of duty. If you'd been there, would you have prevented the hazing? Yes. Guess who loses their house and firstborn child? You do. So what does that mean? If you're given a sponsorship of an organization, take it seriously. If they have an initiation ritual period of time, make sure you're there for it. Make sure students understand that you're not going to tolerate hazing. That is not part of the group's ethos. Okay.
What did you say was the correct answer to that?
I think it was number 2.
Number 2, I would say.
So not 3.
Okay.
Yeah, when they invite you, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Number 2.
Yeah. I was just seeing if you were listening. Okay. Yeah, we've talked about it. All right. Again, this is just one of those things that you've got to mention. And it's a situation where you want to put yourself in a position where you can prove you're innocent. Now, it's not the way it's supposed to be, but real life. You're working with students of an opposite gender, and you've got a guy or a gal says, gosh, I need to talk to you, and everybody's left. And some of us teach classes at night, and that's the way it is sometimes. And so what do? Ask the kid to come back tomorrow. Well, that's really not the best one, is it? Because it might be something immediate. Be mindful of the surroundings. Close the door. Make sure the windows are open, blinds are open. You keep in your regular seat. Let them sit across the desk, or shut the door and just focus intently on the student and the offense. The better course of action, in fact, I would say number 2, but in hindsight, I don't even know that I would close the door. In fact, I've had the case in some of my evening classes where I've had a student come up and say, I've got a problem and I really need to talk to you. And I said, well, let's wait till the class is left. We'll meet here in the classroom, leave the door open, and people can go back and forth. Now, I'm an old man and I know stuff, I'm not going to be accused of much, but there's going to be, there's going to be that one time. And like the rest of you, we've all worked too long and too hard to get where we are and to keep what we want to keep. And so we don't need to let a foolish act or the inability to defend ourselves cause us to lose all that. This is a situation, it's the last hypothetical one that you may confront. A kid comes to you and says that students are making cat calls, calling him names, and such like that. The question is, what do you do? You don't do anything. Well, I don't know you, I don't know the kids, and I'm sorry it's happening. Contact the dean of students, share the complaint with him, speak to the students that are doing this, and maybe tell them, well, look, if you're a real man, you know this yourself, you know how to handle this. Actually, there are 2 answers that could be right. If you know the class, if you know the students, it wouldn't be out of line for you to talk with them, see what's going on. But I would add to that, again, you want to put yourself in a position to prove you're innocent. So I'd probably call the dean of students and say, this is what happened, this is what I did, you may want to follow up. And of course, the more correct answer is that. Let's bump over because I'm mindful of their time. I have a class at 5 o'clock, and they will leave at 5:02 if I Now, here's a question that folks often ask. Should I get insurance? That's really up to you. I don't know that I would spend any of my hard-earned money to buy insurance. If you belong to an organization, the Athletic Trainers Group or whatever, that has a liability policy for little or no money associated with, yeah, I'd probably get that. But I wouldn't join an organization just to have insurance. There are a couple of reasons. The best one is that we have an indemnification policy here at Lee. And that's a fancy couple of words to say, if you're doing your job, if you're acting within the scope of your authority, that the university will hold you harmless. You won't be successfully sued financially. That they'll represent you. They'll provide the support for you. Again, you have to be working within the scope of your authority, doing your job. Jason is taking a group of students on a field trip to Girls Leadership Academy down in Chattanooga. It has an accident on the way down there. And someone is put in the hospital. Mom and Dad sue him for negligence. Well, the university's going to step in and take care of them. There's a gal in Jason's class that's taken a shine to him, and she says, hey, how about us going clubbing down in Chattanooga? And he says, okay. And they go on a Friday night, and there's an accident. Well, that he may have met her through the school, but that's not within the scope of his duties. That's not representing the school. And so he's out on a limb by his lonesome self. Okay. Yeah. Again, if they're acting within the scope of their university duties.
What about faculty who invite students over to their house, like for dinner and things like that?
You're okay. Now, again, it depends, sort of. If during the course of dinner you break out a bottle of Chivas Regal, I suspect that's going to be a problem. Or Chivas something, I don't know. Okay.
But so in regard to that, so if our students are over for grading exams or just like for Gateway,
yeah.
So we're covered for that.
Yeah, you're okay. You're okay. In fact, one of the things, and folks get concerned, but this was taken care of last year, maybe the year before. What about using your own vehicle for school business? Well, the way it works is your vehicle, you provide the primary insurance up to the maximum of your policy. After that, the university's fleet policy kicks in and provides the umbrella insurance. So you've got extra insurance. Well, what if you have kids drive over your house? That'd be okay. They're covered. Personally, I don't have insurance other than, what I get belonging to an organization. If you feel compelled to get some insurance, what I would suggest you do, first of all, is look into getting, it's called an umbrella policy with your homeowner's insurance. That is nominal, $100, nominal in a sense compared to other policies, $100, not nominal. But it provides usually $1 million worth of coverage for that, which is pretty good. And what else have we got? This is it. Again, what I would suggest is when you are confronted with a situation, first question is, what is the reasonably foreseeable risk, and what can I do about it? Again, there are a lot of agencies, groups that are here on campus that are, believe it or not, here to help you. The place to always start is with your department chair. He or she will steer you in the right direction. And act in good faith and that means honesty and fact. And as long as you do that, you should be okay. We have 30 seconds for a question toward Michelle. And I bet her that no one would ask her a question she couldn't answer. There you go.
So, I have a colleague who recently told me that he was asked by a student to send some support money, if he was willing, to the mission trip that his club organization was going on. And I was just wondering what the laws are governing any sort of monetary issues between the students.
The faculty member is free to do that if he wishes. In the College of Education, we had an organization with whom we worked, ELC, and the kids were missionaries and taught English in China. We worked with them. And it's fairly common to get a half dozen requests to support them in the course of a year. And frankly, you pick and choose. You know, you got X number of dollars.
So it wouldn't be construed as favoritism?
No. Unless the person acted in a way to show favor to the student. Like just donating money. My guess is before all of you retire, I suspect 95% of you will buy some meals for kids and provide some funds somehow. So, listen, Michelle and I thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure to be with you. I hope your first semester was a good one, and I hope this one is equally good, if not better. Thanks.
Thank you.